Welcome to the talk Insights Building Sizable Flask Sites. Welcome to FlaskCon 2023. And some brief info about me. I'm one of the organizers of Python Research User Group, pymac.com. I'm into open source. You can view more about me on the link below. And also organize FlaskCon, but this is my first time speaking. And well, normally when you build Flask sites and you build big ones, you have some insights which might help people, especially maybe save years. And sometimes you ask, why do we use Flask for? Well, for me, Flask is simple to get started with. It's very convenient. It's customized. You can customize it the way you want. You choose what you need. You can have the perfect mix, the perfect formula to build your site, which translates into developer joy, because when you have what you like, you are generally more happy. You don't have to battle against opinions which are not your own. So Flask for me is the perfect framework to do web development in, because you get to do exactly what you want, the way you want. One of the insights that you realize is that after many years building Flask sites, you see that you prefer certain structure. There are a certain set of libraries that you always use. There are certain tasks which you can do, but which saves time if automated. And there are certain patterns, certain mistakes that you like to avoid. And these are the components of Flask development, but with maturity. So we have lots of points to consider. For example, protecting Flask against itself. So because Flask changes, you have to worry about backward compatibility. If it's not Flask, it's the dependencies of Flask or the dependencies of the library that you're relying on, or the library that you are relying on itself. So how to protect yourself against that. About theming, how to be intelligent about theming, how not to make mistake about themings, some tips about that, and also about integrating popular packages, because some package are not designed for Flask. For example, they have certain structure, but how to try to come up with a structure which is foolproof to package integration. About some miscellaneous points to consider, about the factory pattern, about configuration profiles, about the environment, the development environment toolings, that some tools that will help you in Flask development, assets, Flask place, about having what's the best Flask base you can have, about documentation, test, code organization, and dealing with containers. Well, those are the main points that we'd consider in this talk. And let's begin. About the structure. So the main thing about the structure is to avoid circular imports, because a bad structure always leads to circular imports. You're always wondering, how do I avoid this? How do I avoid that? And also about integrating packages. For example, you have Celery. You might have other packages. They impose or they like certain structure. So if you want to integrate that in structure in your Flask app, so if your structure conflicts with a structure that popular packages want, so at one point you'd have a structure conflict. So the structure that you choose should maybe compromise or should be foresighted enough to consider integrating popular packages. And well, concerning the factory pattern, maybe if you are just starting Flask, you are a Flask beginner, you'd want to, maybe you don't have an idea what the factory pattern is, and on the internet, even in previous FlaskCon editions, you have many different factory pattern talks, so you can look into it. But the factory pattern is very interesting, so interesting that I recommend anybody to start a Flask development using the factory pattern since the beginning. And the factory pattern is great for testing and also for configuration profiles, to integrate configuration profiles. So this is a must-have if you are building if you are you have the habit of building Flask sites. It makes much sense to go for the factory pattern. About configuration profiles, so in case you don't know what it means, for example, you have development, you have production, and you have testing. Those are the three modes that you'd run your application in. For development, you'd have some configurations which are not same as for production. Typically, this means that in development, you'd be more lax concerning your configurations than you would in production, or you'd want to have alternatives in development to test without wasting money on a service. For example, in the case of sending mails, you'd want, for example, localhost mail sending and localhost mail receiving. So you'd want the configuration for mail sending in development different from that of production. So this is why configuration profiles are necessary, are great to have, and they are great for testing also, when testing, etc. But if you want an optimum solution for configuration profiles, I'd recommend Dynaconf, which is by Red Hat engineer Bruno Rocha, who is also a FlaskCon speaker, by the way. Also about development environment toolings, DJLint, I learned this at FlaskCon, and in VS Code, for example, to lint your Jinja templates, etc. So it's worth it if you have packages designed for Flask components. So you'd want to consider assets, how to deal with assets. So if you decide that you want to have modules, so do you put assets in modules? Do you have a central place to put all your assets? And how do you serve assets if you are not using a CDN? Or do you want to serve assets using CDN? What's the best way to set up an assets pipeline once for all? Because assets is a very important component to think of, so that you can, so that it doesn't get into your way every time. One time you think about how to handle assets, what components you need to code, and it's there forever. Like each time you will use another project, you know how to deal with assets. And also about the documentation, I recommend Sphinx. And so if you want Sphinx, so you'd want a way to include Sphinx every time. Maybe you have a favorite documentation, theming, organization, so you'd want to import that, to export that in all your projects, and you want to think about this. Also about tests, so I really like PyTest, and so depending on your structure, you'd want to have some PyTest configurations. So, and also if you have a Flask base, you'd want to integrate the testing part in the Flask base. But really, if you don't test critical components, one day you'd see that you don't know when, but your tests are off. And code organization, like how do you organize your code? You have the structure, but how do you isolate functionalities? Do you want to map functionalities to portions of code? If someone wants to add a new functionality, do they have a dedicated space to add to plug in their code? How does it work? And the way, for example, if you have a mapping between an area of code, a file, a structure, and a future, do you want to automate the creation of these files, of these codes, the minimal setup, or how does it work? So about code organization, so you'd want to think of a way to speed up development, organizing and automating. This is a point worth considering about containers, because nowadays to scale things, if you go into production, especially as a company, you want to have an uptime. You don't want crashes. Due to like external reasons. So if one node goes down, maybe you want another node to be around, to spin up another node. Maybe that's why you'd want Kubernetes to be around, and Docker, you'd want to know how to deal with Docker. What are the specifics of Docker development? How to deal with Docker in development, in production. So this is a very important point. And some miscellaneous points about caching, for example, so that your app is served quickly. So you'd want to cache responses, you'd want to cache assets. So you need to think of this. Also about rate limiting. You have even, for example, for anything, even normal requests, attempts, login attempts, etc. So even you have packages using Redis to limit the rate at which people call endpoints. So it's worth thinking and looking into. I know security is pretty much a basic component of projects nowadays, but caching and rate limiting also worth thinking about. Also about theming. So we've made many mistakes about theming. For example, for example, for theming, do you have theming only for the front end, or you have theming for back end as well? So theming, essentially, you only load the theme that the user specifies. So you need a way to dynamically load templates from somewhere, and a place where users can specify the theme they want. Anyway, maybe some helpers to access the specific part of the theme. So for front end, for your back office also, maybe you'd want. And one mistake that we did is to integrate back-end functionalities into the front end, meaning that some features only available on the front end to the admin. For example, we were building the Flask on site 2021, so we added this scheduling feature on the front end, but the theme became so complex that it's difficult to change the theme, because so much logic on the front end, which shouldn't happen. So you want to schedule, you want to schedule, to set the schedule for the conference, so you do it in the back end, set all the front end. So never do complicated stuffs on the front end, because if you want to port the same features for the next edition or to the next theme, you'd have a hard time doing so. And also about the Flask base. which is very important. Maybe you'd want to create your own Flask base as time goes on, because whatever points that we've mentioned before, so it's you want to create a Flask base which integrates all those points mentioned before. And cookie cutter is a great option for a Flask base, because you can have a GitHub repo, and then using cookie cutter you can create a new project every time you like. So cookie cutter is really great. You can customize your minimal app, your minimal starting point. Cookie cutter is a basic solution for a Flask base, as there are more involved, more advanced solutions, like for example Flask App Builder, which is a very robust piece of code, which is used by Apache Airflow and which is used by Apache Superset. So this is a testimony. Apache Airflow and Apache Superset is a testimony to the robustness of Flask App Builder. And Flask, here are some features of Flask App Builder. For example, you have model views, charts, boilerplate to create, like you can create a minimal new app. It has authentication, APIs, theming basics, views. It's really complete, makes development easy. The only downside to it I see is that you have to use its own way to protect your, for example, your views, to protect your actions. It strays away from the normal Flask development experience. So, but it's very powerful, and it's the end results that count. So you also have Flask Imp, which we have been using for Flask on 2023. It facilitates code organization. It has support for theming. It's great, minimal, very useful. So you can try it out. You really see the docs. It has great documentation. And this one is a package which I developed, which the idea is to provide as much feature as we can, but keeping the spirit close to vanilla Flask. It takes a Django-like approach. It's designed for big projects, and we use it for Flask on 2021. So it's a bit Django inspired to have Django features in Flask. So if you're building big Flask apps repeatedly, it makes sense to have some Django features which are not Django specific really, because if ever you want to code those features, you have big applications, so these features are a natural conclusion. So this is a bit about Shopio, and this is my freelancing setup, open source, because these are some solutions which I came up with, so it was helpful to me. Maybe it's helpful to others as well. And Ignite is a great SaaS boilerplate, my Sumuk, so it has Stripe, login, logout, etc. It's a great boilerplate. So, and also we must think about protecting Flask against itself, because unfortunately no package can guarantee backward compatibility. So if you don't essentially build dependencies, you'll regret it, whether it's Flask, whether it's the Flask ecosystem, whether it's so pip tools. You have pip tools, Poetry, you have a lot of different package management systems nowadays, but not package management systems, but dependency like management systems. Pip tools is great. It's simple to understand, simple to use, it's quick. So And also, if you want to really avoid protect Flask in itself, you need a robust ecosystem, so that even without doing anything, your project is safe. That's why Palettes Eco exists on GitHub. If you have an old um, project lying around, which is important for the ecosystem, but you don't have time to maintain it, so just ask the Palettes Eco to maintain it for you. And that's why you have the Flask community work group, which aims to solve the social side problems of Flask. So you can also have a look at this talk, which covers some of the points I've mentioned. Practically, using code snippets, you can get in touch on my personal site, compilealchemy.com, and if ever anything is unclear. Thank you very much for